You own 7 businesses. Not 7 side hustles, not 7 ideas saved in your Notes app. 7 actual operating companies. One does HVAC, one does pest control, one is a small chain of car washes, one does commercial cleaning. The other 3 you barely talk about. Combined, they generate about $2.4 million a year in free cash flow. You drive a 2019 Honda Accord with 74,000 miles on it. Your neighbors think you manage a property or 2. Your barber thinks you're in logistics. Your sister thinks you got lucky in real estate. Nobody knows the number. That's not an accident. That's the whole design. And here's the part that most people never understand. You didn't start with money. You started with a structure. This is how a holding company gets built, from nothing to $500 million, and why the people who do it quietly almost never started with a large check. Before we go anywhere, we need to clear something up, because the term gets misused constantly. A holding company is not a business. It does not make a product. It does not deliver a service. It does not hire or fire or answer a customer complaint at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. It owns things. It sits at the top of a structure and holds equity stakes in businesses that do those things underneath it. It collects the distributions. It allocates the capital. It makes decisions about what gets funded and what gets sold and what gets left alone to compound quietly. Think of it this way. An operating company is a machine that produces cash. A holding company is the entity that owns the machines. And here's what changes everything. The holding company and the operating companies are legally separate. That membrane between them, that legal wall, is not a technicality, it is the entire point. A lawsuit against one operating company does not automatically reach the holding company above it or the other businesses beside it. A liability in the pest control company cannot touch the car wash. A lease gone wrong in one city cannot threaten the HVAC business in another. The structure ring-fences risk across every layer. And the other thing it does, the thing nobody talks about in the first conversation, is that it makes you invisible. When your name is not attached to the operating companies, when the businesses are owned by entities rather than a person, when the distributions flow upward through a structure instead of landing directly in your checking account, nobody can see what you're actually worth. That's not hiding. That's architecture. And the right time to build it is not when you have 7 businesses. It's before you have 1. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes at the beginning. They think the goal is to accumulate cash, save up a large enough number, then use it to buy something. That is not how holding companies get built. That's how savings accounts get built. The goal is control, and control, structured correctly, can be acquired with almost no money at all. At the very beginning, before you have any enterprise value, before you have any cash flow, before you have anything that looks like a portfolio, what you have is capability. You know how to run operations. You know how to close a sale. You know how to build a system that runs without you in the room. Somewhere out there, there's a business owner who built something real over 20 or 30 years, a small manufacturing company, a service business, a distribution operation, and they're 62 years old and tired. They want to exit. They want to retire, but they don't know how, and they don't have a buyer lined up. That gap is the deal. You bring the capability to run and grow the business. They bring the asset. The structure reflects that exchange. This is what's called a seller-financed acquisition. Instead of you going to a bank, raising money from investors, or draining your savings, the seller holds a note, meaning they agree to receive the purchase price over time out of the cash flow the business itself generates. The business pays for itself. You might put 10% down, sometimes less. The seller note covers the rest. You sign an agreement, you take over operations, and every month the business generates cash, some of which goes to the seller as repayment and the rest of which starts building your position. This is not a workaround. This is a legitimate capital structure. Private equity firms use variations of this on deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The mechanics are the same, the scale is different. And there's a benefit nobody tells you about. When the seller holds the note, they want you to succeed. Their repayment depends on it. They will take your call. They will tell you about the customer who needs a specific kind of attention. They will explain the vendor relationship that holds the margin together. That knowledge transfer has real dollar value that never appears on the term sheet. This approach, buy then build, is where most serious holding company builders start. You acquire control of an existing cash-flowing asset, then build the systems and management layer around it. You're not starting from scratch. You're buying the foundation and building on top. Now, seller financing gets you far. But there will come a point, usually when the seller isn't willing to carry the full note, or when the business is larger than your personal guarantee can support, where you need bank financing. The SBA 7 alone was built for exactly this kind of deal. It's designed for small business acquisitions. You can borrow up to $5 million with as little as 10% down, and the repayment terms are structured around the cash flow profile of operating businesses, not the collateral profile of real estate. But here's what you do before you close on anything. You build the structure first, one holding company entity at the top, separate LLC for the operating business underneath it, clean operating agreement that defines voting rights, distribution waterfalls, and what happens if someone wants out. The holding company owns the operating company. You own the holding company. This is level 1. One deal, one clean structure, one set of financials you can actually read. And here is the honest truth about the first deal. It will teach you almost nothing transferable. Every variable is new at the same time: the industry, the seller relationship, the integration, the management. You are learning all of it simultaneously, which means you're too close to see what the pattern actually is. The second deal is where you start to learn. The first business is generating cash. The structure is clean, and at some point, usually somewhere between month 18 and year 3, a question arrives that changes everything. What do you do with the excess? You could take distributions. You could pay down the seller note faster. You could sit on it, or you could use it to acquire the next one. That decision, made correctly, is the moment a business owner becomes a holding company builder. Here's what makes the second deal different. You are not just buying a business, you are buying an asset for the platform. The question is no longer just, does this business generate cash? The question is, does this business fit? Does it share a customer base with what you already own? Does it have a distribution channel you can run additional products through? Does the overhead of running it go down because you can put it on the same back-office infrastructure you already built? When a holding company acquires businesses that reinforce each other, that share systems, share teams, share cost structures, the value of the portfolio becomes larger than the sum of the individual parts. That's called multiple arbitrage, and it's one of the most powerful mechanics in this entire model. Here's a simple version of how it works. A small HVAC company generating $300,000 a year in cash flow might sell for 3 to 4 times earnings in a private transaction. That's how small businesses are valued, at low multiples, because there's no infrastructure, no management team, no story. But a holding company that owns 5 of those businesses with shared management, shared systems, combined revenue, that platform gets valued at 6, 7, even 8 times earnings by a larger buyer or institutional investor. You bought each piece at 3x. The platform is worth 7x. You didn't change the businesses. You changed the structure around them. That spread, the gap between what you paid and what the platform is worth, is how holding companies build enterprise value faster than anyone who's just running a single business. Now, the back office. This is unglamorous. This is where most people cut corners and pay for it later. At 2 or 3 businesses, you need what's called a platform layer, a shared finance function, one chart of accounts, one month-end close cadence, one CFO or fractional CFO who can read across all entities and tell you where the cash actually is, one outside legal relationship who knows the holding structure and the entity hierarchy, one set of hiring standards, one onboarding process, one employee handbook that doesn't contradict itself across subsidiaries. These functions cost money to build correctly. They cost significantly more to build incorrectly across 4 companies simultaneously after the problem has already arrived. The platform layer is not overhead. It's what makes each subsequent acquisition cheaper and safer than the one before it. And here is the thing about the legal membrane between entities: separate accounts, separate books, documented intercompany transactions. No casual movement of funds between entities without a paper trail. The liability protection that makes this whole structure work, the ring fencing, only holds if you maintain it. The moment you start treating the entities like one big account, the wall comes down. And if it ever gets tested, if there's ever a lawsuit, a creditor, an IRS audit, you want that wall standing. Here is what a tested structure actually looks like. A former business partner decides he's owed a piece of everything built after a deal you did together years ago. He files a lawsuit, names you personally. His attorney, working on contingency, hoping to find a large personal net worth to attach a judgment to, spends 4 months trying to trace assets back to your name. He finds a house, a modest car, a personal checking account with $7,800 in it. He does not find 7 operating companies held by a trust through a holding company because the structure connecting you to those entities is a legal document in a state that requires no public ownership disclosure. The suit settles for $22,000. You are worth $38 million. The structure worked exactly the way it was built to. Let's make this concrete. You now own 5 businesses. They generate a combined $1.8 million in annual free cash flow. The holding company sits above all of them. The distributions are flowing upward, the capital is being redeployed. And the thing that changes at this level isn't the operations, it's the decisions. At one business, every decision was about making the business run better. Now the most important decision you make every quarter has nothing to do with any individual business. It's this: which one gets the next dollar? This is capital allocation, and most operators who build this far are not wired for it. They built the portfolio by being good at running things. Good operators want to fix the underperformer. They believe in the turnaround. They reinvest in the broken thing because they know how to fix broken things. But the capital doesn't care about the story you have about the broken business. The capital goes where it compounds fastest. That's the discipline. And it takes a specific kind of willingness to starve the business you love the most in order to feed the one the numbers are pointing at. Deal sourcing at this stage almost never comes through investment bankers. It comes through referrals from accountants who do the books for retiring owners, through attorneys who handle business transitions, through conversations that happen because you're known in a specific industry as someone who closes, integrates, and does not cause chaos. Your reputation is an asset the holding company carries. A seller choosing between 3 buyers will often take less from the one they trust. Your structure gets the deal done. Your reputation gets you to the table. Underwriting criteria should be strict enough to kill most deals before they waste your time. Does the business generate consistent free cash flow? Is the owner dependency manageable, or is the business the owner? Is customer concentration acceptable, or does one account represent 40% of revenue? Does the margin hold under a realistic stress scenario? If something doesn't add up in due diligence, it doesn't add up. The deal that requires you to assume the best case in order to work is not a deal. It's a bet wearing a spreadsheet. Management and incentives at this level require a specific kind of discipline. The best holding company builders do not run the subsidiaries themselves. They hire or retain operators who do, then structure the incentives so those operators behave like owners. Profit sharing tied to EBITDA, minority equity stakes that vest over time, monthly scorecards that make performance visible without micromanagement. The operator should know their numbers before the holding company does. If they don't, the accountability structure is broken, and a scorecard won't fix broken accountability. Accountability can't be installed from above. It can only be confirmed there. At some point, and no spreadsheet announces this in advance, the decisions that built the portfolio stop being sufficient to manage it. The mindset that made you a great acquirer does not automatically make you a great capital allocator. And that distinction between finding deals and deciding where capital goes across a portfolio that's already generating it is the line between a holding company that plateaus and one that compounds toward $500 million. Governance at this level is not a quarterly spreadsheet and a phone call, it's real boards. Independent directors who've seen the inside of a deal structure and will say the uncomfortable thing out loud. Audit quality financial reporting across every subsidiary, not because a lender requires it yet, but because you cannot make capital allocation decisions on numbers you can't fully trust. Internal controls that catch problems before they compound. Succession planning that doesn't depend on any one person staying healthy. This is what you're selling eventually when you choose to exit. You're not selling the businesses. You're selling the system that runs the businesses. Exit options at this level are real decisions, not hypotheticals. A recapitalization lets you pull liquidity out of a business without selling it, refinance with institutional debt, take a large dividend, the business keeps running. In a grocery store parking lot on a Wednesday afternoon, you're sitting in the Accord, engine off. You just got off a call with your accountant. A 22-minute call you almost canceled because you had a meeting at 3. She told you the Q2 consolidated number. You write it on the back of a receipt because your phone is about to die and you want to see it written in your own handwriting. You look at it for a while. Then you fold the receipt, put it in your jacket pocket, and walk in to buy coffee and eggs. The person at the register asks if you found everything okay. You tell her you did. The number on the receipt stays folded in your pocket in a jacket that cost $40 at an outlet store, worn by someone whose combined holdings could purchase the building she works in, the one next to it, and 26 more just like them. Nobody in the store knows. That's not luck. That's not secrecy. That's what a holding company actually builds at the end of all the levels and all the deals and all the quiet Tuesday afternoons moving numbers between accounts. Not just cash flow, not just asset protection, not just tax efficiency. A kind of freedom so structurally embedded, so quietly maintained that the number stops feeling like the point. Because the structure became the asset, and the asset doesn't need to be seen to work. If you're somewhere in the middle of building this, one business, no businesses yet, a structure still taking shape, keep going. This channel exists for the person building quietly. We go deeper on every layer, one video at a time.